Southampton is now at my back. I'm plodding ahead on Western Shore, which is misleading since this is the Solent's eastern shore. But that's because Western is spelt W-E-S-T-O-N, as opposed to W-E-S-T, oh, never mind. Just look at the boats. And that's really the point. This is now a recreational area for sailing craft. The industrial complex at Fawley may dominate the coastline opposite, but there's no industrial bustle here. Bar the container vessels heading for the terminal at Millbrook, the big ships have gone. Just ghosts of the big liners and pretty sailing boats. And a rare sight, a splendid old sailing barge glides past. Because it's screened by hedges and tall trees, the next object of interest, Netley Abbey, is quite difficult to find. Well, the sign said it was along here. It is, you know. Netley Abbey was one of the last Cistercian abbeys to be founded in England. A daughter house of Beaulieu Abbey, a group of monks from there took up residence at Netley in 1239. But the abbey fell upon evil days, was dissolved in 1539, and subsequently became the ruin you see today. But a splendid ruin it is. And very large, yet from the road you'd hardly know it was here. A cloistered place indeed. Solent Way, Emsworth, that's the end of the way. Only 32 miles. Now this at Netley was the site of the Royal Victoria Military Hospital, an enormous place with corridors a quarter of a mile long. That is all that remains. Just my luck, it just happens to be covered in scaffolding at the moment. But then they have to do these places up. For the origins of the Royal Victoria Hospital, we go back to the Crimean War and the appalling conditions encountered by Florence Nightingale and her nurses at the military hospital at Scutari. Of 54,000 British troops sent to the Crimea, 18,000 died. And of that number, for every soldier who died of his wounds, another 9 died of infection and disease. Florence Nightingale's indignant campaign for proper medical facilities caught the conscience of the public and moved and alerted the Queen. And it was Queen Victoria, more than any other, who determined that a decent hospital for her troops should be built. She kept up the impetus. Fields at Netley were purchased, and the Queen laid the foundation stone for the new hospital in 1856. In 1863, the first patients were admitted, the Queen maintaining her contact by regular royal visits. It's difficult today to grasp the scale and grandeur of the Royal Victoria Hospital. At 1,404 feet, it was one of the longest buildings in the world, and its huge facade dominated Southampton water. It has to be said that Florence Nightingale now returned to her home near Rumsey, did not approve of the place. She disliked the famous quarter-mile-long corridors, which resulted in the wards being at the back of the building and not at the front, facing south and overlooking Southampton Water. On the water, a long pier for offloading the wounded from troop ships. This was augmented much later by a railway which collected troops from ships berthing in Southampton. This was a hospital to serve the Empire. These are Boer War veterans. 15,000 died of typhus in that war, and others came here to be nursed. A sad irony is that the vaccine for typhoid was actually discovered at Netley, but wasn't available in time to be used during the war. An average of 3,000 patients a year were treated at Netley, but of course the overwhelming influx came with the terrible casualties of the First World War. On the first night of the Battle of the Somme, 21,000 men had been killed or wounded, and 4 days later, 33,000 casualties were on their way back to England. The main body of the hospital simply couldn't cope with the numbers, and a Red Cross hutted camp, Toy Town, was built, which doubled the capacity. In the wards of the main block, the floors gleamed, though the mind boggles at what the hygiene-obsessed Florence Nightingale would have made of the ward cat. Many patients found the sheer size of the place oppressive, though efforts were made to give it an humane face. And all testified to the quality of care which they received.
Well, as you've seen, Netley Hospital has gone, but there are some who will always remain.
Since relatives claimed many of the dead for burial at home, there are only 700 First World War graves. No age group was spared, from 17 to 55, and from all parts of the Empire and Commonwealth, New Zealand, Australia, South Africa, Canada, and prisoner casualties from Germany. From the time of the Crimea to the present, though the first person to be buried at Netley was a woman, Georgina Atwood, an army school teacher. There's the grave of 18-year-old Nora Caveney, the first ATS girl to be killed in enemy action. And the last person to be buried here, a Sergeant Eastwood of the Royal Medical Corps. It's a pleasant last resting place and beautifully kept. The 220-acre site which once housed the hospital is now the Royal Victoria Country Park, a broad, open recreational area facing Southampton Water. The creation of the park demonstrates great foresight on the part of Hampshire County Council in their determination to protect the foreshore and prevent happening here what's happened at Fawley and even at Hamble. And Hamble, as it happens, is my next stop. Hamble is all about sailing. Amongst yachties worldwide, the Hamble River is famous, and there are more boats and sailing clubs to be found here than on any other comparable stretch of water. Apart from the many moorings and yards on the Hamble where boats are kept, there are now 4 large marinas on the river. It is the Mecca for the boating tribe on the south coast. Of all the places I visited, a mere pedestrian really feels his landlubber status. If pedestrians are dry, the rest here are wringing wet. This booming yachting on the Hamble is relatively recent. Why? Well, why does anything catch on at a particular place? Certainly an explanation is deep water at all states of the tide, good shelter, and with the new motorways, it's easy to get to. In any case, the Hamble River had declined as a working river in the 1890s, when local fishermen found better pay crewing for rich yacht owners at Cowes and elsewhere. As to fishing, the crabs and lobsters for which Hamble was once known are long gone, as are the oysters. One thing that hasn't gone is the ferry, and a ferry has been crossing the Hamble on request for the past 500 years. The previous ferryman retired at the age of 82. The present incumbent, Ray Sedgwick, has only been doing the job for 28 years. And that means providing a service every day of the year. Well, that is, except Christmas Day. And what did Ray do last Christmas? He visited another ferry at Hayling Island. Unfortunately, that too wasn't running. But that didn't really worry him. Well, says Ray, who needs a holiday anyway if you've such an agreeable job?